Live right here on this Tuesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. Conference tournament week picks up just a tad on this Tuesday. 4 tickets to the dance will be punched tonight, but also at the high major level in men's college hoops. We start a couple of those conference tourneys on this Tuesday afternoon with some daytime basketball starting just after noon Eastern time. Let's begin in the ACC. It should always be in Greensboro. Sadly, it is in Charlotte this time around. But Duke is the hefty favorite to win the ACC tournament title after claiming the outright regular season conference crown. Minus 340, the price on the Blue Devils. Frankly, DRS, that should not be shocking for a team that went 19-1 in ACC play, 14-6 against the spread, booked as at least a 6-point favorite in all 20 ACC games with an average margin of victory of nearly 22 points per game. But the question is not Duke, who probably wants to perform as well as they can in Charlotte to try to take down that #1 overall seed for the NCAA tournament, but who provides that best test for the Blue Devils. As you look at the odds outside of the Dukies, where do you go?
Yeah, only two options, right, would be Clemson and Louisville, and I just think you answer your own questions there by saying 18-2 and 18-2, similar type teams. I do think Clemson is a better team overall than Louisville, but not by a big margin. The big margin is Duke at minus 340. Is that even price appropriate? Should it be minus 500? They're by far and away the best team. Now, the only thing that goes against the Duke Blue Devils is, even though they're playing in Charlotte, earlier tournament matchups when other teams' fans are still in the building tends to go 25% Duke fans, 75% everybody else, and just cheer against Duke at that point. Then as they move along, other teams are out of the building, and they start to get that 50-50 inside the building with their fan base here. But I don't anticipate an upset because this isn't one where, like, they're leaking oil coming in and it's no big deal, or they're worried about injuries and how they're going to play this thing out. If they just play Duke basketball, they've slaughtered this conference throughout the regular season. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to change more. Like, what goes against you? You just saw a game where North Carolina is a talented team. Have things worked out all that much for the season? Not necessarily. But in a game they had to win in a raucous building and had Duke on the ropes and had their best player, the best player in the country, in foul trouble and still got beat by double digits. Go find me a team that's going to knock off Duke, because I can't find it in the ACC.
Donnie, I was so impressed by Duke in that game. North Carolina inside the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, desperate need of a quad one win. Had every answer for Duke in the opening half. And yet you would look up and the Blue Devils were still up by 7, 9, 10. It wasn't until the final few minutes of that first half that UNC was even able to cut the lead to a single possession, 43-42 at the break. So how does Duke respond as Carolina is riding the momentum at home? They dominate in the second half and win by 13. I have bet Louisville to win the ACC tournament. I believe in ACC Coach of the Year in Pat Kelsey, who has had one of the greatest year-to-year improvements based on win percentage in the high major level history in college basketball, because you are really trying to find that best challenger. But frankly, Donnie is correct. You could bet Clemson or Louisville on the bottom half of the bracket with a big plus money price, basically trying to get to the tournament title game and maybe finding a hedge out or cash out opportunity by the time we get to Saturday night in Charlotte. Donnie, it should be said, UNC is the 5 seed. If North Carolina were to make it to the semifinal, it would be a rematch against Duke. And again, that would provide yet another golden quad one opportunity in a neutral site, in a raucous environment on Friday night. Would it be enough for North Carolina with a victory to get to the big dance? That remains the question, because as of this moment, UNC is minus 800 to miss the NCAA tournament for a second time in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, if you're taking a flyer, like, again, people, hey, 5, 10, 15, $25 here. UNC 28-1 to win the ACC because of how much it means to them and what they need. But also, you're still coming up against what you said. It's like, hey, it's a neutral site. It could help them out. Number one, they just lost to Duke at home in their own building, in the most raucous atmosphere you can have. And secondarily, it's like, hey, Duke really struggles in neutral site. Did you see what they did to Illinois in the Garden? I mean, it's not as if like, hey, Duke away from home, completely different ball club. No, they're not. They're still unbelievably talented, and it seems like Duke has the perfect recipe. Hey, they're not shooting the three all that well. They can do so many things well where it's tough for another team to even compete. But if I am just taking a flyer for fun, 28-1 UNC, see if they can rise to the occasion one final time.
Plus 470 is the price for the Heels to get into the NCAA tournament. 28-1 if they would have reached the semifinal and have that opportunity against Duke. Would probably be close to a plus 470 price on the money line, something of the sort. And again, Charlotte is not far for either fan base. There would be a lot of representation and probably close to a 50-50 split. Clemson has been great. Clemson was an Elite Eight team. I think Brad Brownell, the head coach of the Tigers, one of the more undervalued coaches at the high major level in D1 college basketball, worth a flyer on them at plus 650 as well. Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. Houston is that top seed, of course, winning their second outright title in as many years in the league, and a plus 110 favorite to win the conference tournament. But it feels a little bit more up in the air, perhaps. Houston has a lot to play for, but pretty firm on that one line. Can Texas Tech make a run? Of course, the odds makers optimistic for Iowa State. The Cyclones, Donnie, the only team that you see there in the top three, shall we say, that does not earn a double bye. Iowa State only an opening round bye as the 5 seed.
Yeah, if I'm looking at saying, okay, Houston probably should win this, but it's only plus 110, I'm getting two teams for the price of one, meaning I would take Texas Tech and Iowa State plus 330, plus 550, so I get two chances to knock off Houston here on a neutral court. You take a look at the net ratings. Of course, we just saw the ACC where you have a team that's one game behind, two teams that are one game behind the Duke Blue Devils, and the net rating is so outrageously tilted between, like, I think it's like 1 and 19. At least it's a little bit closer here. It's 3, 7, 16, 24, 10. Right. You get the point at this. But for my money at this point, again, I would take Texas Tech and Iowa. Give me two shots at Houston. Even though for me, I think Houston is the best team in this conference, but give me two quality teams, and maybe Houston stumbles, you get your foot in the door, and maybe you can even turn it into that plus 550 price on Iowa State.
We'll continue to break this down on the other side of the break as well, because there is another team to pay attention to. That would be BYU. The Cougars streaking into the Big 12 tournament as the 4 seed could set up a huge showdown against Iowa State in just a few days. Plenty more conference tournament week action next. Big 12 tournament prices as it starts at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time in Kansas City. Cincinnati facing off against Oklahoma State. Let me just talk about Cincy. You'll see them near the bottom of this list. 9th best number at 150 to 1. Donnie, there was a time in early December that Wes Miller's Bearcats were a top 10 Kent Palm team, and the floor was very, very high. The ceiling maybe even higher. Cincinnati more than likely going to miss the NCAA tournament. Not more than likely. They are going to, unless they can win the Big 12 tournament, capped off by a disappointing home regular season finale against Kansas State, only scoring 49 points. So for Cincy, can they start some momentum here? We shall see. They're a 6.5-point favorite in their Big 12 tourney opener against Oklahoma State. Again, just a little bit after lunchtime, noon Eastern. I mentioned BYU right before we got to the break. 12-1 price on the Cougs. They have won 8 straight entering the Big 12 tournament, covering in 7 of those 8 victories. 3 outright on the road against tournament teams: West Virginia, Arizona, Iowa State. Some might contest the victory in Tucson with a couple of interesting calls down the stretch. I would not disagree. And they did win the Holy War against Utah in their finale. They won that game by 11, did not cover as a 12.5-point favorite. But Kevin Young and his Cougars playing great, great basketball, have a conference first-team performer in Richie Saunders as well.
Yeah, and you take a look at the price points here, too. It's not as if it falls off a cliff. Like Houston plus 110, 350 to 550 to 950 to 12-1 and 14-1. 14-1 is a realistic price here for a quality basketball team that still has to knock off some opponents. Then you start to hit that shelf, 35-1, 100-1, and so forth. But this is what we always talk about, these major conferences here. Let's just say the top half of it, legitimate chances on a neutral court to knock off other teams. And also, you heard me use this term plenty of times so far, the slingshot effect. It's tough sometimes for the teams that are coming off a bye, playing a team that just played yesterday on that same court and played well. That's an advantage for that team here, where you get off to a slow start as the higher seed. The other team's coming up ramped up. You find yourself at the first breakdown 15-4. Now it's a dogfight the rest of the way. So I couldn't fault anybody for saying, hey, give me BYU. Look at that. They went lights out from three-point range. There's nothing. Not even Houston can do if they're launching 35 three-point shots and making 50% of those shots here. So it's a fun conference top to bottom. I've zeroed in on Texas Tech and and Iowa State. But if somebody's reaching down there as far as Kansas at 14-1, why not? It's neutral court. Kansas could have a big fan base there.
For sure. And Kansas City, no doubt about it. They will feel like home games for the Jayhawks. And again, DRS, when you look at Kansas, it's a whole new season, right? Disappointing in the regular season, 8 conference losses once again for KU. They are going to be a tournament team, but for the preseason number 1, who was disappointing last year, followed by a disappointing season once more this year, it's a whole new ballgame. They can kind of pick up where we expected them to be. Hunter Dickinson, I think, a 33-point performance in the finale against Arizona at home on Saturday, 83-76. Speaking of the Cats, they were 11-1. Providing a great test to Houston in the Big 12. Could they rival the Cougs for that regular season crown early in February? Arizona and Tommy Lloyd dropping 5 of their last 8 in the regular season. Can they find their footing? Baylor, a lot more offseason expectation than they perform. Some veteran transfers. Jeremy Roach from Duke. Norchad O'Meara making his way from Miami with a very talented freshman in VJ Edgecombe. Can Scott Drew get this team to play? West Virginia should be a tournament team, avoiding a couple of bid stealers during conference tournament week. 100-1 price. K-State also much higher expectation. Should be a great week in Kansas City. And just to say, DRS, Kansas, that's 6th seed. So their path to a tournament, they get the winner of Utah and UCF. Those 2 teams play tonight. Kansas will play in their opening game in KC Mo tomorrow. If they win that one, they get an Arizona team who they just beat in the Fog on Saturday to end out the regular season.
Yeah, no, there you go. And it sets up perfectly for them because you want to try to avoid the top teams as long as you can, but it's hard to do when you're not one of those top 4 seeds as you get in. But I'm looking for some fun in this, and it's a shame that we look at Houston. It's like, let's look for ways to beat them. When they went 19-1 in conference play, the next best team, again, Texas Tech at 15-5, and they're only priced at a +110. They're 4 games clear of the second-place team. And then we take a look at teams like in the ACC, the Duke Blue Devils, who are 1 game clear of 2 teams and almost a -400 price. It's kind of crazy.
It is insane, Donnie. But Houston was that good this year. It deserves its respect, as I'm sure a lot of people are giving them. Now number 2 in the AP Top 25, by the way. Duke number 1 to end out the regular season. Auburn dropping its final 2 games in regular season competition. Falls back to number 3 in the AP poll. Other conference tourneys starting today. Next. Not just the high majors getting underway today, 4 more conference tournaments outside at the mid-major level starting on this Tuesday as well. In Conference USA, Liberty the frontrunner at a +130 price. Basketball on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, where the top team in the conference tournament in the MAC, Quinnipiac, at a +240 price is booked as the favorite. In the SWAC, Southern, a +165 price to win it. In the WAC, Grand Canyon, a +155 team. Last year under Bryce Drew, Grand Canyon made it to the big dance as well. A lot to like, DRS, all conference tournament week long, and 4 tickets in conference tournament titles to be claimed on this Tuesday evening as well into the big dance.
Yeah, these conferences should have started last week. I mean, get center stage, get the broadcasting all week long, have them during the afternoon, Saturdays, Sundays, and get after it here. It's kind of a shame that these will get buried a bit by the high majors that are going to play, but certainly you're seeing the price points here. +130, +240, +165, +155. You know what that tells me? A lot of teams from these conferences are legitimately in play to punch tickets here. No -400s, -500s, -300s. I mean, look at that one price, a +240 in the MAC conference with Quinnipiac at +240. That's tremendous. That means 5 or 6 teams legitimately can go on a run in Atlantic City and cut down the nets and find their way into March Madness.
Donnie, you mentioned this for a lot of our mid-major tournaments last week, and we have seen that on display here as we've gone through the bracket. Delaware is a 12 seed, the lowest ever seed to reach the CAA semifinals, and now make that the championship game tonight. A magical run, 4 wins in 4 days. Not only is it about momentum, but we saw this on display even in leagues like the Horizon, where 3 of the top 4 seeds reached the semifinals, and a proven team, of course, in Greg Campy's Golden Grizz. You know what the spreads were for our semifinal games last night? Robert Morris, top seed in the tournament, 3.5-point favorite against Oakland. Game was decided in overtime by 3. We had a matchup last night between Cleveland State and Youngstown State. Youngstown State get the victory. The Penguins going to play for a spot in the Big Dance for the first ever time. That was a 2.5-point spread, actually in favor of Cleveland State. We saw it in a matchup in the other CAA semi. Charleston and UNC Dub. In the SoCon title game, Wofford and Furman, 1.5-point spread. In the Sun Belt Championship game, 2.5-point number in favor of Arkansas State, were the underdogs in those two tournament title games. If you want to call them underdogs, won outright, getting about 2.5 points or fewer. You said like versus like competition. When we see this on a year-to-year basis, game over game in conference play, by the time you get to this stage, when it's winner take all, the edges are so slim. The margins are incredibly tight, and thus you can find some value in those pre-tournament prices or even at certain stages as these teams prolong their way throughout the bracket.
No, absolutely. And also understand this. You take a look at the Metro Atlantic. And again, a lot of these teams are going to be so close here. You got what? 15-5, 14-6, 13-7, 12-8, 12-8, 12-8, and 10-10. That's fantastic here. But also, you know, what's the goal we have here for the Metro Atlantic? Because they play in Atlantic City, which is great. It's a resort town. It's also the gaming capital of New Jersey. And of course, New Jersey in 2017, flipping the switch there to we can gamble legally. It's fantastic. It's been great. We're partnered up with the FanDuel Sportsbook, everything we love about it. But you're telling me that the Metro Atlantic Conference can go to Atlantic City, a huge casino town, to have their tournament, and yet you can't bet on these tournament games? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then I guess the fact would be if they played these just across the river in Philadelphia, which it actually used to be at the old Civic Center in Philadelphia, we would be able to bet on these games just as long as the New Jersey team wasn't involved. It doesn't make any sense. The smaller conference needs as much exposure as you possibly can. And I can guarantee you, viewership and also going to the game would be exponentially higher if you allowed to handicap and bet these games and go to Atlantic City to watch them here. And sometimes just, you cut off your nose to spite your face. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. Move it out of Atlantic City then. Put it back up. Because I remember also the A-10 used to be where Sieno's home court was in New York. So we'd be able to compete and bet on that like we used to in the past. It's a shame that you go to Atlantic City, which is a great town. It's an unbelievable venue, and you can't actually wager on the games. It's stupid.
It really is a little bit insane, but it's all the regulations that come with collegiate sports as they try to uphold any amateur values left. Of course, we know that has been, is, and will forever be a facade. Let's get to the WAC tournament quickly, because Grand Canyon, a tournament team last year, is not the top team in the bracket. That would be Utah Valley. They were 15-1. 15-1 in conference tournament play. GCU 13-3. The only two teams, DRS, in the WAC. It's only a 9-team conference in total, but the only two teams in Utah Valley and Grand Canyon to win double-digit games. Very interesting bracket format. Starting today, as we get this tournament underway, it's a matchup of the 8 and 9 seed in conference tournament action. That will be Southern Utah and Utah Tech. Afternoon game that we have from Las Vegas. And then tomorrow, the top two teams, that would be Utah Valley taking on the winner of the 8-9 game in Grand Canyon, as the 2 seed will match up against UT Arlington. So you see the top two teams on display tomorrow. Then they get a bye until, I guess that would be Friday, as the 3-6 matchup and the 4-5 happen on Thursday to get to the semifinal round on Friday. It's an interesting design to benefit the top two teams, obviously taking on lesser competition in the 1 versus 8 versus 9 winner in the 2-7 game, but an interesting kind of bracket format. And again, Grand Canyon has the pedigree. GCU, the Lopes, a plus 155 price, but Utah Valley, 15-1 under Todd Phillips this year in conference play. Their only loss to GCU, that was on the road by 18, did beat Grand Canyon at home as well. Really good defensive team in Utah Valley. Might be worth a sprinkle if you think that is going to be the anticipated tournament title game. Of course, Utah Valley will probably be booked as an underdog, but you might be able to get some value.
Yeah, and also you take a look at a very good defensive team going up against a high-tempo team in Grand Canyon, some things to watch out for. But anytime you're in those tournament games where if you live and die by the three-point shot, chances are you're probably going to end up dying by the three-point shot. You look at Grand Canyon on offense, number one in conference play, close to 55% inside the arc. And then you take a look at their defensive imprint, number one inside the arc at defense at 43.4%. I like those concepts when I'm looking for, look, we don't have to rely on the three-point shot, and we can absolutely make it inside the arc. But then if you don't make your three-point shots, good luck coming inside the arc. We'll defend the hell out of the basketball there.
A very fast tempo for the Lopes. That is what GCU does. They play an even faster tempo this year than they did a season ago when they earned a bid to the NCAA tournament as a 12 seed, a trendy 12 seed pick. They beat St. Mary's in the opening round of the Big Dance in the round of 64 and then got Alabama in the round of 32. We thought that would be a high-scoring game, 72-61. But a 30-win basketball team a year ago for Bryce Drew and company out of Phoenix. This year, the overall record, 23-7. Keep an eye on Grand Canyon. They are booked as the favorites in the WAC. But I do like a sprinkle on the Wolverines out of Utah Valley. 4 conference tournaments starting today, along with the 2 that we have at the high major level. Quickly, Conference USA. Didn't spend a lot of time. Liberty should be that team, Donnie, booked as the favorites, correctly so, but could be a very compelling CUSA tournament.
No, it is. And again, you're looking at those top teams, 13-5, 12-6, 12-6, 10-8, 10-8, 9-9. Anytime you get more than half of your conference above 500 and put them on a neutral court, crazy things happen, which again, isn't that why it's called March Madness at this point? Crazy things will happen. It's a lot of fun to watch you play out. And we are right at the precipice of greatness starting last week into this week, into Sunday, into next week, the next week after that, Ben, the next week after that, and then the Final Four and the championship. Fantastic times ahead.
Fantastic times ahead. Liberty, the top team in CUSA, but that was Jacksonville State until the final week of the regular season. Oddities there. Mike Blewett joins the show up next. The football insight from Mike Blewett, always appreciated. But here in the opening few weeks of March, we called him a man about town, a man about the country, a man about conference tournament week as Mike Blewett was traveling all over to take in conference tournament action, most recently at the Summit League, maybe the Horizon League as well. Blue, where have you been? Where in the world has Mike Blewett been in the last 5, 6, 7 days?
I have been in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, site of the Summer League tournament. I'll throw some pictures up on social media. Packed house, really there almost every night for women's games, men's games, and obviously an exciting tournament. The South Dakota State women haven't lost in 65 games in the Summit League. Very dominant team that has a chance to make a run in the women's tournament. And Omaha on the men's side, their first ever NCAA tournament appearance, smashing the garbage cans, all that stuff was really a lot of fun. Their fan base showed up really well at championship night, and Markel Sutton, their player of the year. Omaha might end up with a 15 seed. They're probably teetering on the 15-16 line. I think they'd be a fun team to watch in a 15 matchup. Those 16 matchups can get pretty tricky against some powerhouse teams, but I think Markel Sutton is somebody that could make a name for himself, not just this tournament, but let's be honest, the transfer portal is going to be calling for him. A really good player, and they're a really fun team to watch. Chris Crutchfield, their head coach, a longtime assistant at Power Programs. Good to see him have success.
I'll tell you what's calling right now, Mike Blewett. That's an NCAA ticket that we're waiting on to see who is going to cut down the nets in March Madness. So let me just ask you this question through. How do you handle this week with all the majors, now the high majors, playing their conference tournaments? Do you bet this week, anticipating what's going to take place on Selection Sunday, or are you the type of wagerer like I am? I wait till Sunday brackets to come out to see who I actually want to pick based on the matchups I foresee on the paper.
I would say that you can look for some angles, Donnie, in this week. I would certainly look for some edges this week, because here's the reality. We have a lot of body of work right now. These tournament games, these college, I personally think tournament week is equal to March Madness. I think March Madness started a few days ago. I think it's a fantastic week to be able to bet. Right. And I think it is still, after all these years, underrated in comparison to the larger tournament. So what I would say is that we have a general profile of the teams that can win the national championship. And those general profiles aren't going to change, whether they win their conference tournament or not, even if they get bounced in the first round. So I'm talking teams like Duke and Auburn and the teams right at the top of the list. Their profiles aren't going to change. And a team like Alabama, as much as they are a force offensively for the second year in a row, and I ate my words last year when they got to the Final Four, I have concerns about a team like that having an off night offensively. They are not as proficient defensively as some of the other top teams. So it's probably a team I'm going to shy away from when we get to filling out our brackets and everything else. But I think you look for those really strong defensive teams, and I don't think that changes from tournament week to next week, Donnie.
So as Mike Blewett starts to fill out the bracket, maybe Sunday night, early Monday morning, maybe waiting to see what happens in the first four on Tuesday and Wednesday. Blue, as you look at those top 10 prices to win a national championship, or maybe even off the board right now, just a team that you have noticed, who do you think you'll have reaching the Elite Eight, Final Four, maybe even cutting down the nets in San Antonio?
I like the mixture that you have there, too, of the teams on the board. If you look a little bit further down, teams like Iowa State and Texas Tech, how big of a run can they make? St. John's and Michigan State playing very old school basketball, hitting a lot of twos, not so many threes. Can they survive playing that way, playing tight games defensively, buzzer beaters, overtimes through 5 or 6 games of a tournament? That becomes very tricky. But clearly a team like Florida showing a lot of firepower along the way, depending on the bracket that they get. I think that's a team that people are really going to be looking to make noise. It may not be the household name that in Cooper Flag that Duke has, but Florida is certainly a team out of those that I like a lot. I love the way Houston plays, but they're another team that when it comes to playing that style in a tournament, it's hard to win 5 games in a row.
It really is. And that's what this is. A tournament known for its chaos, maybe more specifically, its madness. Blue, correct me if I'm wrong. You're going to be with us in Bracket Central coverage on Friday for the round of 64, correct?
Yeah, I might make Atlantic City this week for the MAC. I'll see you next Friday and next Saturday, and then I'll be in San Antonio. So I love it. My favorite time of year.
This guy, college basketball savant. Blue, we'll see you next week when the madness truly begins. Hour number 3 up next. Let's get you ready for an awesome Tuesday in college basketball. On the men's side, we've got high major conference tournaments beginning in just about 2 hours. Big 12 tourney in Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. Some breakdowns coming. But, Donnie, even more than that, in the opening round games we will see at the high major level over the next 48 hours, we've got 4 tickets to be claimed to the NCAA tournament on this Tuesday night. Let's start with the best one. WCC tournament title game out in Las Vegas. It's Gonzaga and St. Mary's. The Gales sweeping the Zags in both games during the regular season as St. Mary's claimed its second consecutive regular season crown in WCC action. Now looking for its second consecutive conference tournament title against Gonzaga. Mark Few and his Bulldogs have often reigned supreme in this conference. Would they win tonight, it would be 5 WCC tournament titles in the last 6 seasons. Gonzaga, 3.5-point favorite to exact some revenge against the Gales. Donnie, how do you see it playing out?
It's crazy, man. It really is. It doesn't make any sense when you look at this line. Neutral court site, a team that beat them both home and away this year in St. Mary's, who plays wonderful defense, has a great offense, and yet they're the underdogs. But technically, I do agree with that line because you look at Gonzaga's offense, it's absolutely fantastic. Like the efficiency rating, 124.5, incredible. But St. Mary's does have a great defense. The one thing Gonzaga doesn't do is turn the basketball over. That is always going to help. But let's get down to the crux of the argument. When you talk about the three-point line, if you like to shoot the three-point shot, St. Mary's isn't the defense to do it against. Number 3 in conference play at only allowing 30% from three-point range, and number 1 in conference play at chasing you off the three-point line. Well, if Gonzaga shoots a three-point shot, it's going to be wide open, and they knock down their fair share at 36% of the time. But look at the overall numbers here. There's 11 teams in conference play. They're 11th at volume from three-point range, which means if the 3 is there, they'll take it, but they don't need to force it as a major part of their offense. Take a look at their point distribution inside the arc. Number 1 in conference play at 57% of their points coming from that direction. Look at St. Mary's defense. It is great, but where they're vulnerable just a little bit here, they don't give up points from the three-point line, but they do give them up in the paint. 58% of the total defensive points come from two-point range, which is number one in conference play. So if there is one angle to play, Gonzaga's team actually fits into that sort of parameters of what St. Mary's wants to try to force you to do. Where they go, we don't need the three-point shot. We'll take it if it's there, but we will score inside the paint, and we'll be deliberate in doing that. So for me, I agree. I like St. Mary's, rooted for them all season long, but in this particular game, I think Gonzaga has a slight edge. And as I told you to start the show, a team that already lost twice to this team on a neutral court now, not a home court for St. Mary's, is an actual favorite. I'll buy into that. I think it's Gonzaga tonight.
It is the old cliche. It is the old adage. It is hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season. St. Mary's will try to accomplish that. Gonzaga, by the way, in both games against the Gales, first one in Moraga, second one in Spokane, booked as a slight favorite in both. St. Mary's pulled the outright upset, and because St. Mary's won, they dictated tempo, both games staying under. Donnie, there is no more correlation in my estimation with the total of 137.5. If you think Gonzaga wins tonight, the pace is probably up. The offense is efficient. Yeah. The Zags, a top 10 offense in the sport, a top 10 rated team in KenPom at this moment, probably pushing to the over of that total. If St. Mary's is able to hunker down, probably keeps us under that number of 137.5. This is not a game where a team needs to win to earn the conference tournament and the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Both teams will go dancing. It is for bragging rights and supremacy in the WCC. Awesome game to be expected. 3 other conference tournament games on this Tuesday. Can the 12 seed in CAA action continue its magical run? That is Delaware taking on UNC Wilmington. The Seahawks an 8.5-point favorite. Horizon League final. Robert Morris, 3.5-point favorite against Youngstown State. If Youngstown State can win, DRS, first NCAA tournament berth as a D1 team that became a D1 team back in 1981, and the hottest team in college basketball, the Central Connecticut Blue Devils, hoping to make it 15 straight wins, including every game in the NEC tournament, to earn the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Double-digit favorite now against St. Francis.
Yeah, Delaware's been hot. And by the way, that game should have some fireworks here. You take a look at UNC Wilmington's offense, number one in efficiency in conference play. They do a lot of things really well. That Delaware's defense, which, again, based on the regular season, they're atrocious on defense. But their offense is playing so well, it's covering up for the defense. I don't know if that's going to happen tonight. It's a pretty good footprint here for UNC Wilmington to have their way with Delaware's defense tonight.
And we'll continue to talk about those title games. What is at stake and the tickets up for grabs for the NCAA tournament up next. We'll get back into conference tournament week, but it's NFL free agency as well, and some big breaking news for the reigning Super Bowl champs. The Philadelphia Eagles have traded CJ Gardner-Johnson, CJGJ, an emotional leader for that Birds defense, to the Houston Texans. We're not sure what it's in exchange for just yet. Heading back to Philadelphia, but Donnie, as you're trying to scour the interwebs to find out what exactly the deal is, what's your initial reaction for your Birds dealing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
I don't know. Like, do we not know something here? Like, CJGJ was just on Twitter like, man, get these bum blankety-blank vets out of here. Let these young guys cook. Like me and Reed Blankenship back here handling our business, and those young quarterbacks will be able to spin on the outside, only for him to be sent away. Oh, hold on. The Eagles are sending standout Gardner-Johnson to Texans for first-round guard Kenyon Green. Like, because I don't really know too much about former first-round guards. Yeah, this is catching me off guard right now. I'm not too understanding of what we're actually doing here. I don't know. All right, that's my topic right now. This is kind of weird.
Yeah. So Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M 3 years ago in 2022 was the first-round pick, 15th overall by Houston. Dealt with injuries, did not play the entirety of 2023, started 9 games last year in 2024 for a Texans offensive line that, of course, was not very good. The Texans trading away everybody on a bad offensive line, which is also an interesting move as well.
That means Mekhi Becton's not coming back then.
He's gone, right? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to garner too much, you would think, at the guard spot for that.
Sounds not
so
right.
Green
here,
Yeah, it's Green in a 2026 fifth-round pick, CJ GJ in a 2026 sixth-round selection, headed back to Houston. Good for the Texans, adding to that secondary. CJ Gardner-Johnson still performing at a high level, of course, and is kind of that emotional piece for that Philadelphia secondary. Something's not adding up for you, huh?
Yeah, they had a missing piece. Yeah, Houston had a missing piece at safety. So they get Gardner-Johnson, who you love him more than like his coverage skills, is that he is going to be the dog in the fight. Like if anybody needs backup, that's your guy right there. And he sort of walks the walk and talks the talk at the same time. But for his Twitter account might be fantastic over the next couple of hours if you want to watch this play out, because he's no stranger to, I'm going to move on from a team. I'm going to like that. Like he just won a Super Bowl, and he'll tell you how bad the Eagles organization is. They can't play. Meanwhile, telling you the last couple of days, like, we're good over here. Like, we got so many ballers. So I don't know where this actually came from, but it's an interesting move that really caught me off guard. So the Eagles get their guard to replace Mekhi Becton, but give up one of the leaders in the secondary. And it's not like, hey, it's a first-round draft pick or who's slated to make $2 million this year. It's an odd move, man. Sometimes the NFL, I shake my head at. You trust Howie Roseman always has his eyes on the prize at this point, but that's a really interesting one. Again, just a couple days ago, we're good over here in the secondary. Let these other guys get out of here, and now he's out of here at this point.
Because the Eagles did release Darius Slay, who signed somewhere, the Steelers, I believe, right? Darius Slay made his way to Pittsburgh, and James Bradbury, who was also on that Super Bowl winning team, but not playing nearly as much. You give Howie Roseman the benefit of the doubt in any maneuver that he does make. Did Keely Ringo do anything with the Eagles this year? Right?
He might start this year on the outside. Yeah. That might be your outside corner now at this point. So the young kids are going to be cooking out here for sure at this point now. My goodness.
You know who's not just because there might be a spot to fill in the the depth of the safety. You know who is not a safety? Cooper DeJean.
Now here's the point about that, which you got to look at Howie Roseman. Is he so devious that he starts playing Cooper DeJean a couple snaps at safety? So when he has to sort of get him a new contract, you're a safety, man. Deal with it, not a corner.
Tamper down the expectation a little bit for that white boy run.
I don't know.
That guy has been on? No, I don't think so. I don't think. You know what we didn't discuss also? Another trade yesterday, a little bit under the radar, but one that was kind of fun to monitor. The Eagles traded backup quarterback Kenny Pickett, who played down the home stretch for the Birds in the absence of the injured Jalen Hurts, to Cleveland. In return, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and a fifth-round pick back to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, as of right now, the Browns don't seem like they're in love with a quarterback at the top of the market. I think we learned yesterday how some of the teams drafting in the top 10 view this quarterback draft class in 2025. Donnie, I think there's a good chance that Kenny Pickett is the Browns starting quarterback come week number 1.
No, it really could be, and they needed a veteran guy in there that can sort of handle it, but also understand this, like the Eagles gave up a decent draft pick for Kenny Pickett, but you know what the reason why Kenny Pickett's in Cleveland? Not because they don't like Kenny Pickett. They love Tanner McKee, the third quarterback on the roster. He's better than Kenny Pickett is. So now he gets ascension to that number 2 spot at this point, and the Eagles, just like every other team, if you have a pretty good backup quarterback that you feel has a young, talented base for himself, and the next year you might be able to flip him for a third or a second rounder. That's what they love. But this kid is better than Kenny Pickett, and that's the reason why Kenny Pickett ends up in Cleveland. Cleveland just a benefactor, got a cheap backup quarterback for a good price. Why? Because the Eagles really love their third-string quarterback, not their second-string quarterback.
Again, I'm not so sure Kenny Pickett is just the backup. Unless the Browns really make a move at the top of the NFL draft, you would think still a team in desperate need of a quarterback, certainly after the re-signing and extension for Myles Garrett, that if they told Myles, hey, you can still be in the hunt for a Lombardi, I can't even really say that with a straight face, you can still maybe make the playoffs as a team here in Cleveland. We're going to go get you a quarterback. We'll get you a Super Bowl winning quarterback as well. I guess they did so in Kenny Pickett. All right, DRS. Some other news around college basketball and some other big games. Just did want to highlight the NEC tournament title game. Northeast Conference Championship till tonight between the hottest team in college basketball, the Blue Devils of Central Connecticut. 14 straight wins. They take on St. Francis, double-digit favorite. The Blue Devils were tested in the semifinal on Saturday against Fairleigh Dickinson. They had a 17-point lead at the break. FDU came all the way back in the second half to force OT. Central Connecticut did escape with a 4-point win, 76-72. Should be a good one tonight. A lot favors Central Connecticut in this matchup. Defensively very strong, very efficient on the offensive side of the floor. But I'm not so – the 10.5-point spread is an interesting number. Could be competitive tonight, as they all are in tournament title games.
No, it couldn't. You take a look also at St. Francis on offense, Ben. In conference play, number one inside the arc, close to 56% as a team, which is very efficient. Now, at the same time, Central Connecticut D's up at 46% inside the arc, which is number one. So it's 1 versus 1. But when you look at the point distribution breakdown, number three in conference play at scoring inside the arc with 52% of their total distribution of points is St. Francis. Third at giving it up is Central Connecticut. Maybe they can stay close in this game, because it's not when I look at both sides and say this should be a runaway on each side. And you always know in these type of games, you're going to be fouling at the end. Maybe it's just a late 3-point shot that goes down with 5 seconds to go and they walk off the court and you get the cover. But maybe St. Francis can hang around in this one against Central Connecticut.
In a big one, of course, in the Horizon League, Robert Morris takes on Youngstown State. As we have shared, the Penguins trying to get to the big dance for the first time as a D1 program. They have been a D1 program for more than 4 decades, since 1981. Bobby Moe, as they are known on this network, the Colonials in the top team in the Horizon League. Donnie, trailing by as many as 7 in the final 7.5 minutes last night of the semifinal in Indy against Oakland, fought their way back. Greg Campy and the Golden Grizz, I think, shot themselves in the foot numerous times down the home stretch. Robert Morris won it in OT. They are a 3.5-point favorite tonight against Youngstown State.
Yeah, here's the tough part about Youngstown State. It's usually a team that I would like to line up on teams that allow you to shoot the 3-point shot. They're number one in conference play. Almost 50% of their shots come from 3-point range, and they can bury you there. But number one at defending you off of the 3-point line, that's RMU. Maybe it's just a better matchup here for Robert Morris than it is for Youngstown State, just looking at that one metric here.
Yeah, maybe so. And again, when you look at the CAA, can Delaware keep the magical run going? In all 4 wins in the conference tourney, they have shot at least 45% from 3. UNC Dub, a good team, but they will let you hoist from deep. Keep an eye on the Blue Hens diving into that one. DRS, we send you off here to the money line, my friend. Have a great time. We'll see you tomorrow on a Wednesday here on the early line. We continue with John Rothstein. What?
Gotta start cooking, CJ, GJ. Gotta get some details.
Live right here on the early line. It is a Tuesday in the month of March, which can mean only one thing. John Rothstein joins us here on TEL, courtesy of the FanDuel Sportsbook, but of course, covering the sport of college basketball like no other for CBS Sports. And John, here in the month of March, the work continues. A new podcast with CBS Sports, them taking on your show. First edition today, live at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time in the month of March. It even grows for you, my friend. Congrats on that. Excited to see what the show has in store this afternoon.
Thanks, Ben. Always great to be doing more content in March, the greatest month that we have on the calendar year. But that month has been amplified because I get to talk with you every week. So let's get at it, my man.
And that warms my heart as well. John, it is a great portion of conference tournament week on this Tuesday. 2 of the high major leagues in action, ACC and the Big 12. 4 spots into the big dance at stake tonight, as well as we look at the 4 conference tournament title games. In the WCC, it's St. Mary's and Gonzaga. In CAA action, which you can see tonight with John Rothstein providing some of that insight in studio. Can Delaware continue the magical run against UNC Wilmington? NEC conference tournament title game. The hottest team in the country, Central Connecticut, in their matchup against St. Francis. And can Youngstown State go dancing for the first time in the Horizon League final against the top team in the tourney in Robert Morris? John, of those 4 tickets to the big dance that will be punched tonight, what's the storyline everybody needs to know?
Well, I think the storyline is obviously we have such a unique matchup in the CAA tournament. You have UNC Wilmington, who was the 2 seed, has won 26 games against a Delaware team that is 3 games under 500, Ben, and was 1-11 in its final 12 games of the regular season. Delaware now just 40 minutes away from a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. And then I think we have to look at what's going to happen in Las Vegas at Orleans Arena. Gonzaga has been beaten twice by St. Mary's this season. St. Mary's, though, beat Pepperdine last night. 28-4 this year under Randy Bennett. St. Mary's has not been back to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament since 2010, which was the only time that it went under Randy Bennett. So the Gales could obviously add momentum to that quest with a victory tonight over their WCC rivals.
Both teams will be in the big dance. Where exactly on the seed line, that is at stake in conference bragging rights, of course. St. Mary's hoping for the trifecta. 3 wins this year in all 3 games against Gonzaga, the Gales, an underdog as they have been in the previous 2. But, John, the regular season at the high major level completely done in college basketball. Let's take an eye at those national championship prices that we will see in San Antonio in just a few weeks. John, when you look at the top 10 here, or maybe some teams outside of this list, how many teams right now do you think can actually win the entire thing?
I would probably say 6 to 8, Ben, if we're being honest. But I also think that one of the things we're looking at right now is we're now taking the view 30,000 feet out, 5 days away from Selection Sunday. We don't have a dominant team in college basketball. Duke clearly has the best roster of any team in the sport. There's no denying that. Auburn has been the best team and has the best resume. But there are no teams this year in the sport close to what UConn was last year or close to the way UConn was playing 2 years ago when it ripped through the NCAA tournament like a chainsaw through butter. I think we could see, I would say, only 1 or maybe 2 1 seeds in the Final Four. I think we're going to see really a chaotic NCAA tournament.
Which is what we can only hope for in a tournament known for one thing above all else. That is madness. Duke ends the regular season as the outright regular season winner in the ACC and the number 1 team in the AP Top 25, that national championship favorite. As we get underway today in Charlotte for the ACC tournament, of course, John, Duke, the hefty favorite at minus 340. Such a strong favorite and well-deserved. But I ask you this question. Who do you think is the best test for the Blue Devils in the ACC tourney?
Well, I think the best test for the Blue Devils would be Clemson, but that game wouldn't happen until the championship game of the ACC tournament. So there is a chance that Duke may go through the whole ACC tournament and not play a team that's projected to be in the NCAA tournament until the title game. Now, Duke played Illinois. I know Illinois was dealing with the flu going through their team, but Duke played Illinois a couple of weeks ago at Madison Square Garden and destroyed the Illini from tip to finish at the world's most famous arena. But the question mark now, is Duke going to be battle-tested enough for the NCAA tournament? There is no doubt in my mind that this is the best roster in the sport. And I'll say this, if Tyrese Proctor can be a consistent third scoring option behind Flagg and Knippel, and if Malik Brown can give Duke that small ball 5 defensively to close games, much like Duke had in 2015 with Emil Jefferson, Duke to me will be the national champions.
Yep, it seems as though Duke is playing at the pinnacle of the sport right now, certainly on a path to do just that. Cut down the nets in San Antonio in less than 4 weeks. John, 19-1. Duke's record in the ACC this year, also the Big 12 mark for Kelvin Sampson and his Cougs in that conference. They are the 1 seed in the Big 12 tourney that starts today in KC. Not quite the minus money favorite at minus 340 that Duke is in the ACC tournament. How open is the race for the conference championship in the Big 12?
Well, it's always going to be open in the Big 12 because there's so many good teams. If you remember last year, Iowa State won the Big 12 tournament and also, blew out Houston in the process in the title game. But here's the thing, Ben. We obviously keep a close eye on conference tournaments because teams on the bubble are going to need wins in these settings to bolster their resumes for the NCAA tournament. But we have seen mixed results over the years as to what kind of momentum in a conference tournament will then lend itself to momentum in March Madness. So I'm curious to see sometimes, teams who are knocked out early in these conference tournaments get more rest, get more momentum for the big dance. I'm curious to see how that correlates. Talking to coaches, and I've seen several coaches talk about this on the record. John Calipari recently talked about it with the SEC tournament. I've heard Mick Cronin say it. The NCAA tournament is what matters. Now, you want to win every single game, and you're paid to win games. But with that said, it's really, really difficult to project just how much conference tournament success is going to correlate to what happens in the big dance.
Momentum is always key in March. You want to be playing your best at the best time of year. but not utilize all your best action before the big dance. John Rothstein, as always, we thank you. More on the early line up next. Plenty of conference tournament action in college hoops in just a moment. But of course, as we shared, the NFL free agency frenzy continues on this Tuesday morning. The big deal that Philadelphia made that is leaving everybody at the moment kind of scratching their head. CJ Gardner-Johnson dealt by the Birds to the Houston Texans in return. Former first-round pick by Houston, Kenyon Green, and a big acquisition at the quarterback spot. Daniel Jones has signed a one-year deal with Indianapolis. The actual financials are being finalized at this moment, but Daniel Jones now makes his way to Indy. Of course, released by the New York Giants in 2024, made his way to Minnesota, kind of provided that backup experience to Sam Darnold. The Vikings were hoping to maybe have him back to be the backup to J.J. McCarthy. He now makes his way to Indy, which I find very compelling and seemed almost like a natural fit, because the Colts told us during Combine Week in their home city that Anthony Richardson would be involved in a quarterback competition, a QB battle this offseason, but with a quarterback to be named later. That guy is now Daniel Jones. Is he worth $40 million per year? I think we can definitively say no to that. On a discount, though, could he make some waves and be consistent enough for a franchise? Sure. And I think we're getting all indications that Indianapolis is maybe not all too pleased with Anthony Richardson, or not overly optimistic about his future as the face of the franchise. It has been a struggle in terms of consistency and accuracy for AR in his 2 years in the NFL, dealing with some injuries as well. $14 million is what we're seeing here. 1 year, $14 million deal for Daniel Jones, getting paid to find his way to Indianapolis. Not overly expensive, but still a good deal for both parties. All right, let's talk some of those high major games that we will see on this Tuesday. Again, starting in just about an hour and a half in Kansas City, Missouri. We've got the Big 12 tournament opener between Cincinnati and Oklahoma State. Cincy now a 7.5-point favorite against the Pokes. I will just say this. Oklahoma State, not a great team in the Big 12 this year, but 11-9 against the spread in conference action, covering in 3 of their final 4 as an underdog. I do expect that game to be close. As we shared earlier, the Bearcats under Wes Miller, top 10 Kent Palm team back in early December. Can they find their footing? Maybe make a run in KC? We shall see. Colorado and TCU, a good one. The Buffs disappointing this year, but Tad Boyle telling everybody he will be back in Boulder. 2.5-point spread in favor of the Horned Frogs. And a good one tonight, Kansas State, Arizona State, 6.5-point spread in favor of the Wildcats. Again, disappointing year for the Sun Devils. Very disappointing year for K-State. A really talented transfer portal class led by Coleman Hawkins, who made himself an NIL bag. They started off terribly. They went on a run in the middle of the new year, kind of faded down the stretch a little bit as well. But a dangerous team, a talented team as a new season begins in a conference tournament. First game in the ACC tournament on this Tuesday. Notre Dame and Pitt. Pitt, 3.5-point favorite against the Irish. Jeff Capel will be back for Notre Dame. Same with Micah Shrewsbury, trying to turn things around in South Bend. Utah, 1.5 favorite against UCF. That's Big 12 action as well. Excuse me, you never know with some of these things. But Utah, of course, not a head coach in place currently with Craig Smith, who was let go. They do have a new head coach coming. Danny Jensen, I believe, is the name. Former Utah player, was working with the Clippers. It was the Clippers, right? Because the guy left the Sixers is going. That's Lenny Laux. Luke Laux. He's making his way to Florida State, replacing Leonard Hamilton. Final few games for Leonard Hamilton in his illustrious career, more than 2 decades in Tallahassee. Don't even worry about the other team they're playing. Just give me a moment here for a second. The fact that Red Autry is coming back to Syracuse basketball is an absolute travesty. As a proud Syracuse alum, as somebody that loves Syracuse men's basketball, we are on the brink of irrelevancy, and that sucks. Syracuse, 3.5-point dog today against FSU. Let's talk the battle for the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Both Auburn and Duke will be on the 1 line, but who ends up as the number 1 overall seed and thus gets to pick what region they play in, kind of gets to dictate their path through the big dance. Auburn's still a hefty favorite at minus 360, but these numbers just about a week ago, minus 3,500 for the Tigers to be that top overall seed. Auburn should be it. The resume is just ridiculous. 16-4 in quad one games for the Tigers, but Duke does have the head-to-head advantage. We shall see. We'll talk more about that later in the week. A Wednesday, we return here on the early line, 8 a.m. Eastern.